Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Wednesday. It is June the number two. I want to do a Trump impression for that for some reason. We are going to be doing our last show of the week today. And because it's the last show of the week, and normally it would be a friendly Friday when we end a week, we're going to do a weird Wednesday with also Steve Friend. So I've got a little surprise guest for you all. He's hanging out in the chat with you, and he's going to be part of today's program. He's going to help me limp through some of the insanity that I keep seeing. Let's see. Today, we're going to talk about the curious case of Candace Owens. What's curious, you say? Well, Candace seems to show either signs of narcissistic personality disorder. Maybe she has some delusions of grandeur. Maybe she's got some sort of like a mental illness happening there. Maybe she's schizophrenic. I don't know if she believes this, but she appears to be quite genuine in deciding and saying to her audience that she was the sole reason that the Ukraine-Russian peace deal couldn't get hammered out because she was making fun of the president of France's wife, who she believes to be a man. And that is what is holding up the Ukrainian peace deal. And Donald Trump had to step in. I shit you not. That's where we're at right now. The FBI has captured a couple of Chinese spies, and they're out there touting it, and you can't believe it, because when you go and read the press release and you go and read Deputy Dan's statement on it, he said that they are very excited because they have 5,000 intelligence cases open. And for me, that's kind of a stab in the heart, because I know that I went on a podcast with the guy who used to be Deputy Dan, but is now Deputy Dan. He used to be Podcast Dan. And I told him the single most dangerous thing to American liberty as we approach Independence Day was the FBI's intelligence investigations. Non-criminally predicated investigations that do not result in charges. And so he was so excited to say that 800 of those 5,000 were started this year. So they're still doing it. If you guys think that the FBI is going to get better, I just want to shake my head about that. So we're going to go through the press release, what it says, what it doesn't say, and so on. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the most famous illegal alien in the history of illegal aliens, is a whistleblower. You guys didn't know that. I didn't know that. I found that out today because of our friends over at NBC. So I'm very excited to report a new whistleblower who is an illegal alien who's also an MS-13 gang member. So that's freaking cool. The big, beautiful bill, it passed the Senate. It doesn't look great. The Senate parliamentarian stripped out some of the things that people wanted, not just guns, but more. You're going to find out that there's going to be no taxes on tips, except it actually will be taxes on tips if you actually make a living with tips. They limited it at a dollar amount. Same thing for Social Security. You're going to be able to get your Social Security without taxes as long as you don't make enough Social Security. So there's that. That's kind of where we're going to go with today. That's the story. And I've got a lot of insane sort of fun video clips and some gotchas that we're going to play fun with, and we're going to have fun with Steve Friend. So that's the plan as it is being laid out. Let's also talk about scams and ways that you can avoid them. If you guys want to protect yourself, you might want to check out my friends over at Patriot Protect. The website is patriot-protect.com/Kyle. It's a little bit wordy, but it's pretty easy to remember. patriot-protect.com/Kyle. Link is in the show description. That makes it easy. 184 million password credentials was stolen from AT&T in a most recent data breach. It seems like pretty much every week I read one of these data breaches, by the way. I think these people they're constantly getting hacked at all times. And once they do, they find out that all of your information is out there in the world. Then hackers don't have to hack you. They can simply just use your logins and access your stuff, whether that be your AT&T account, whether it be your email, whether it be bank accounts or email providers. It could be healthcare portals and so on, even government services. Steve Friend and I were both victims of an OPM hack that the Chinese did, where they got all of our personal data, including our SF-86, which is our background check form. Not great. If you guys want to eliminate your name from the pile of these hackers as they go out there and put your name on personal data broker websites or try to sell it on the dark web, you can do so with a company like Patriot Protect. They're the ones we use here in the Seraphin household. Both me and Mrs. Seraphin are using them. If you use my name, Kyle, you're going to save 15% on an annual subscription. It's very cheap. It's single-digit dollars per month. So if you guys jump in, they will help remove your name from data scrubbing websites, these publicly available things. It's actually how I was able to dig up as much as I was on the alleged shooter out in Idaho. If you want your name out of that pile and you don't want to be an easy target for scammers, then check them out. Again, patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Save yourself 15% on that annual subscription. Get your name out of the pile. Get less fraud and scam and so on and so forth. It's not really a question of if. It's really a question of when. We're going to dive into all of the some things. Maybe Candace Owens got scammed. Maybe someone called her and was pranking her. Maybe her name is in that pile. We'll find out in just a second. Here we go. Last time I did this, I made some noises over the top of that music, and it was referred to as walkout music from my buddy Steve Friend. Good morning, Steve. Thank you for wearing a shirt that is not black.
My pleasure. I don't want to add to the legend that I have no appendages and now no legs.
You're just a disembodied, faceless head that floats there in Florida.
Head. Hey, I think I need to make sure that I have walkout music because I am like a tier 1 podcast guest. Because you give me a call on a pinch saying like, hey, you want to come on? And I looked at my busy schedule and realized that the only thing I have scheduled is Friendly Friday. So I'm always available. It's always my Super Bowl whenever Kyle Seraphin reaches out.
I didn't tell you this, but before we went and you jumped on, I had to actually rejigger the entire thing like you saw last time where my camera got all blown out and everything, and I had to go and size it. So now I'm going to be a bigger disembodied head than you are today. So folks who are watching will notice that my head is bigger than Steve. It's not on purpose. I'll deal with it later. Okay, so Steve, have you been following the exciting saga of this lady? I want you to just read this headline because this comes from Mediaite, which is like a left-leaning loser source, but it is absolutely hysterical. Give me a read of that one.
Candace Owens reveals Trump personally asked her to drop conspiracy theory that Macron's wife was born a man. Okay.
Initial thoughts on that.
So my initial thoughts are, I think that Candace Owens might be like the Liver King. Like she bought into her own persona so much that she has now gone over the edge and is like on the verge of making terroristic threats against Joe Rogan.
Could she fight Joe Rogan, do you think?
She'd do better than the Liver King. Because she'd fight dirty and kick him in the crotch.
She'd pretend that she couldn't fight, and then she might, sneak up and poison his drink or something. Get one of his supplemented drinks. Really, really weird stuff. Like several things can be true at once. It could be true that you have this, like I've read all the same things that everybody else has, so I have no idea about Macron's wife and the stories. It's kind of like if you only have a limited amount of information, then what are you going to do? How do you even assess any of that stuff? But take that out of context. Leave that alone for a second. Does Donald Trump personally call podcast lady Candace Owens I think she's pregnant right now, which also may weigh into this as we sort of evaluate the factors. She's a pregnant lady doing a podcast. It led me to my number one thing that makes me, first of all, who are the worst women in the world?
Liberal white women.
Okay, and they love Candace. They love them some Candace. And what it occurs to me is all the women that my wife watches for podcasts, all the women that my wife sort of consumes in the content sphere, none of them are actually acting conservatively. None of them. They all have jobs. And
like Megyn Kelly.
Like Megyn Kelly. Not conservative. Like, fine, Republican, leaning the way that people do. But at the end of the day, all of these women are not acting in a conservative manner. And then they go out there. Almost all of them are touting lives they don't live. I cannot tell you the number of like female influencers on the conservative right that are unmarried, or they have a baby out of wedlock, or they are desperately pursuing their next position for a lot of money, whatever it may be, because they don't actually practice what they preach at all. It's made up.
And Candace Owens specifically, like her background is so bizarre and so odd. Like she was elevated before she was ready for any sort of prime time influencer, thought leader role. Like she came up with some idea, like she wanted to dox people that were being hateful on video games, but didn't actually have the technology.
Social autopsy. Yeah. So this is a website she created, which was a woke leftist idea, 100% woke. And she said, why would you like get into a flame war with somebody online when you can just dox them and preserve their stuff for archives forever, and then we'll always be able to shame them?
And I remember her doing an interview. I think it was a Rogan interview, like when she first became a public person. And she made a remark in that. She said, like, I've reformed my life. I used to wake up and I was not a morning person. I always figured I just wasn't a morning person. And then I realized it was just because I was abusing alcohol and I had to like make a change. And he like inquisitively, like Joe Rogan is wont to do, is like, wow, that's really profound. Like, how long have you been doing this? She's like a couple weeks now.
Got it. Nailed it. Yeah, bud. It's hard. It's hard to look at that kind of stuff and just be like, all right, so let's listen to what she says in her own words. We're going to let her say it in her own words. This is the call for, so by the way, in this, let me just read the story for a second too. Candace Owens claims that she received a personal phone call from Donald Trump on behalf of French President Emmanuel Macron, urging her to stop pushing wild conspiracy theories that, is it Brigitte? I don't even know. Brigitte or Bridget Macron, his wife, was born a man. Owens made these revelations on a recent episode of her show Candace, describing a surreal moment she picked up a phone call from Donald Trump. The craziest thing about this is that first she claimed that it was somebody from the White House, and then later it was Donald Trump who had to follow up.
Yeah. Gotta
so
level
this is
up.
her describing. And then in order to try to figure out what to do next, she called her favorite confidant, Tucker Carlson, to get advice on how to handle this. It's a lot of name dropping in one podcast about how cool you are. So here she is making this claim. Anyway, I think these are fun only because it does show you that there's an audience of people that will listen to you, especially if you tap into a vein. Nick Fuentes actually was on. Do you know this? Nick Fuentes did a debate with Dinesh D'Souza on InfoWars yesterday.
I saw that was happening. I didn't see the actual debate.
It was actually pretty interesting in so much as Nick Fuentes is very bright, but he's very limited and he's very like narrow in scope of his knowledge. Dinesh D'Souza is also very bright and has a much broader thing. I watched it and I just sort of hated that that's where we're at in America, that a grown, serious-ish man who, Dinesh makes some like kind of puffy pieces and he certainly profits off what he's doing. But I don't dislike Dinesh and I don't think he's wrong very often about the stuff he's talking about. And then you got this dude Fuentes who like, he's in the Candace Owens category of,
Dinesh
I know what my audience wants.
Dinesh can write a book because he's probably read a book, and I don't know if I could say that about Nick Fuentes.
I think Fuentes has read like all of Wikipedia, though. So there's that. All right, here's Candace Owens talking about the White House messenger that was not Trump, and then later Donald Trump called to follow up on this. So here we go.
When I call that person back, they tell me something that is even stranger. They say, look, I again am the messenger here. What I was told from somebody that's pretty high up at the White House is that Emmanuel Macron is holding up negotiations to end the Russian and Ukrainian war unless you stop speaking about his wife. And I'm just going, what? What are you saying? What are we even speaking about? What do you mean negotiations between Russia and Ukraine? I'm just like, looking into a story at my house. I've got a very small team here, and you're telling me that somehow negotiations are being held up and it needs to be communicated to me that I got to stop talking about Brigitte? What are we saying? And then I'm asking myself in my mind, because I hang up this phone and I am in true shock. Did Emmanuel Macron pretend to fly into D.C. under the guise of negotiations, the Russia and Ukraine war, and then instruct someone on his entourage to have an off-the-books discussion, a little meeting on the side, maybe somebody, again, like a Susie Wiles, where he made his truer demands? Like, hey, this is for the pictures. Me and Trump, we're talking about you. We're going to get it done. And then what really goes on behind the scenes is like, we're not doing anything until that little podcaster, Candace, agrees to shut her mouth. What? This is crazy. This is absolutely insane. Okay. So I say, we ended the conversation. I say, I'm going to sleep on this. It's a lot to process. I remember I get into bed and I just turn to my husband and I say, no one will ever believe us.
Nor should they. Let's just give the maximum grace, latitude, and stipulate that the crazy things she's saying, like a large part of them are actually true, just to push this to the most extreme conclusion, right?
Okay.
Let's say that Emmanuel Macron is married to a secret man, and that in order to facilitate the negotiation of a peace between Russia and Ukraine, the French leader went to the American president and said, go to this podcast woman and tell her to stop talking about it so that we can have peace. And she said in her head, after this all was collected, all these data points, she said, it's in the best interest of me to go on my podcast and expose this. So that would mean that she's deliberately causing the Russia-Ukraine conflict to not be resolved. Like, so can we just hang that around her?
When you say it like that, Steve, like I'm totally on board. Anyway, no, she went to another confidant. It wasn't good enough just to tell her husband that nobody would believe it. She decided to reach out to somebody else. And so she was like, who's a bigger name in podcasting than me? Maybe I'll go to one of the biggers. Maybe I'll just go talk to Tucker Carlson and see what he's all about. And so Tucker will give me the thing. And Tucker will give me the advice, by the way, to lean into free speech because it's most important, but also do what's right, whatever that means.
And I resolve, as I'm speaking to this situation with my husband, that I should also reach out and maybe call someone who's potentially been in a predicament like this. I don't know, someone who's got a larger audience than me and kind of call in a favor, because I don't normally text him, but I did reach out to Tucker Carlson. And I just kind of told him the situation and was like, look, this is really weird. I know I don't normally contact you for advice, but I could really use some advice right now because you know how much free speech matters to me and basically how important this particular story is to me because it involves, potentially, not just potentially, like pedophilia, incest, all of these elements. And as a mother, the idea that people this powerful, that the story could be covered, it matters. Like this actually, the truth just matters at the end of the day. But also, like, if I could end the Ukrainian and Russian war, and by just stopping this conversation.
I had to turn it off because Steve and I are dying in the background. Steve, she could stop the freaking war. Dude, she's about to get
power. So she called up her good friend Tucker and was like, hey, remember the last time that you had an incident happen where you were discussing pedophilia publicly because First Amendment things, but you had the power to end a kinetic year-long conflict between two Eastern European nations? And what did you do because you have so much experience in this space? And he just said, Candace, you have to look inside yourself and do the right thing.
You got to know that free speech matters.
She had to end the war in Ukraine so she can take credit for it. And if she doesn't, she can just say, well, it's because I was exposing things, because free speech about pedophilia, which is related to the French president who I've accused of marrying a man. I don't know where children sexually being abused is playing in there other than...
Well, the story would be that that this man this man allegedly is also like her father, is his father rather. That's the claim. So Candace believes that, as I understand it, that Macron's father became a female teacher of his and then married his own son, and that's what's going on.
How does this person have any sort of platform in America other than the fact that
half the people have an IQ of under 100? I didn't know how this was going to work in, but now this is how it works in. It happens because there are people in this world that have lost their ever-loving mind, and many of them are men. This morning I got text messages from the only non-J6er. Actually, I'm just going to read it. These are super fun. You ever get I get a lot of hate mail that makes me happy. Because people don't realize like how funny I think they are. And I'm just going to read this one right now. So here we go, Steve. This is actually going to be somewhat offensive because this guy has an acronym that's offensive. This guy, Eric, the only non-J6er on X, sent me a message. And this is indicative of the mental illness that exists. So this is a broader point I want to make. He wrote, Kyle, we know what you are. You're still a pig's cunt. Which is people in government servitude who can't understand normal thinking. That's what the acronym means. And so he sent me that out of the blue this morning at 6:30 in the morning. So at the most generous, it's 7:30 on the East Coast, and that's what he started with. But he's probably not on the East Coast. And I wrote, "Oh, good morning, Eric," because sometimes I just want to play with these people. And he was like, of course, that's all you got. Is that correct? Then he sent me an acronym with a picture of the pig that is like wearing a pig hat, and he's mad, and it says the acronym spelled out. He said, you're a fraud, and you're a terrorist, and your narrative is a lie, and your fabrication by your terrorist employers. We know who they are. Tell them I say hi, as well as who you are, and what I'm not, okay? Cheers to you. And I was like, oh, I just got a message. It said you might be getting a knock at your door early in the morning. I'm really sorry for the difficulties you're about to experience, Eric, because you know me. Is that a threat? Yeah. Are you a thug? A fraudster? And I'm like, no, I just got a message from Eric Prince. He just sent me a text. I don't know what it's about. I don't know Eric Prince, for the record. I just don't know who he is. Like, I know of him. And he was like, are you registered as a foreign agent for the filthy British crown who you serve? That's cool. Semper Fi. What's Eric say? I met his terrorist trash in Shanghai when I was at some event thing. And I was like, Eric said you should just go with them gently, that they don't want to hurt you. They just want to have a talk. Because this is who I am. More threats of violence. And then he just has on and on and on. And I had to do the podcast. So anyway, this is an indication of where we're at. Candace Owens is in that same camp of those people. And the same camp is this person who's known as Ryan the Witch, or Rain the Witch. I don't really know. R-Y-N. What do you think? Rain?
Rhine, like the
Rhine, like the river.
Rand.
Okay. I want you to assess the credibility of the following disclosure that I got yesterday on X. And now I am aware of the secret evil Trump. I didn't realize what an awful person Donald Trump was, that he's actually doing this. And now this person who wears a bandana and has a nose ring that's ripe for a 9-volt battery recharge is going to disclose what the government's been hiding from us.
Guys, they're throwing the deportees out of the planes and into the ocean. No, this is not a drill. No, this is not fear-mongering. They're shackling people, flying out into open ocean and throwing them out, okay? The flight patterns, there's people tracking them on this app. The flights going out with the deportees, watching them go out to open ocean and circle back. A family in Italy saw 5 shackled bodies wash up on the shore.
Oh.
No, but seriously, on everything that you stand for.
Hold on. As we, how did they get to Italy? That seems like a really far jaunt. How far are we flying then?
We flew them all the way just off the coast of Sicily and then decided to drop the bodies into the water?
Look, I'm going to have to do a quick, in the moment, Italy. Does Italy have a coastline that I don't remember that, does Italy have a coastline that touches the Atlantic?
Or is that all Mediterranean? I don't think so.
It's 100% Mediterranean, and it's actually like deep in the Mediterranean. So these people would have washed out. We either dropped them in the Mediterranean, which is an interesting tactic, or we dropped them in the Atlantic and they managed to make it through like the Strait of Gibraltar, and then they rolled all the way in past all the possible islands, the Spanish islands, made it past the various little things that are hanging out there in the middle of the Med, and then washed up on the coast of Italy. Let me let this lady finish her argument because it's pretty good.
Or whether it's bullshit, consumerist propaganda, or actual leftist good values, or whatever the fuck it is you believe in. Things are getting serious. I know I'm a small creator and the likelihood that I am shadow banned is very small, but I'm telling you, I'm fairly certain I am shadow banned because I talk about this stuff. If you look at my like to view ratios, they're great. I have several viral videos. I don't understand why I'm doing so badly. No, my shit's not boring. No, I'm not boring. No, I'm not funny or not okay to look at or whatever the fucking issue is that would cause me to not be getting the likes and follows and views.
That's the white Candace Owen.
Yeah, and completely appropriately, I hope at least that's not her child in the background. But
I'm confident that is her child in the background.
That's her child in the background as she's pontificating about the United States government throwing illegal aliens out of the back of a C-130 into the Mediterranean Sea because people in Italy saw things. And like, I know I'm not good to look at or funny or interesting, but I'm totally shadow banned because my like to view ratio, which is probably 1-to-1 because I like my own videos, indicates that I'm talking to some sort of digital gulag.
You know what's funny? My wife watched that and she was like, she's making the same complaint you do. Your like to watch ratio is way off. And I was like, no, mine really is though. It's demonstrable. I don't know who that lady is.
True communism's never been tried.
You know what the best thing is? She's on TikTok, right? And TikTok is a Chinese viral app. The idea, and this was revealed a long time ago. This was revealed while you and I were in the FBI, is that what the Chinese government built in through the program of TikTok is that you get viral videos right off the bat. Like everybody will get some degree of virality, whether it's really viral or whether it just shows that it's viral with a high number of views. And it makes you addicted with that dopamine hit, like, oh, I need to do more of this. So you spend more time on the phone. And what is the phone doing? It's grabbing all your geolocation. It's tagging all your movements. It's getting access to your, all the stuff that's going on in the background of your phone. So the spyware app that is TikTok, hence the reason people wanted to go ban this stuff. They all do the same thing, by the way. But it's the more time you can spend on that app, the more they can screw over what you're about and figure, like, that's the purpose of the app. Like, you're the product in TikTok. And this lady's mad because she's experiencing exactly what TikTok was designed to be.
And it's even more nefarious as far as like being a weapon against the American population, where like we're get Tide Pod challenges over here, and in China they're getting things like, hey, you should play the piano and do science experiments.
Hold on, we do Tide Pods?
Tide Pod challenge. Can you, I don't know, put the pod in your mouth and eat it? Because we had people dying.
Should you do a Tide Pod challenge? Is that a thing that people should do or no?
I'm not a doctor. I don't want to get you banned here. So I'm just going to...
So this is not medical advice, but Steve Friend's general, let's call it dad advice. Can you give a dad advice of whether or not a Tide Pod challenge is advisable?
If you are tempted to engage in a Tide Pod challenge, I think you need to like reorient your life, change your diet to like 1 almond a day, and then go run a half marathon and do hard things and develop calluses, because like your life is way off track, and you're probably going to wind up with a nose ring that makes you look like you're endeavoring to become some sort of like some cattle and have a chest tattoo.
She doesn't look right. She doesn't look like she's correct. Like, what's going on with her is not normal. But all of this stuff to me reminding me of something that I think we can both relate to, which is that this all comes out of the same sort of mental illness movement. And that movement started, it started at the beginning of the 19th century or 20th century. It was in the early 1900s. And it ends inevitably in this, who also has the same nose ring, by the way. But this is a man who's really mad about feminism being used to attack men. I think they probably share the same rationale. You know, those good leftist values she was talking about. Enjoy this.
They're like, oh, we respect Leah as a woman, as a trans woman, whatever. We respect her identity. We just don't think it's fair. You can't really have that sort of half support where you're like, oh, I respect her as a woman here, but not here. They're using the guise of feminism to sort of push transphobic beliefs. And I think a lot of people in that camp sort of carry an implicit bias against trans people, but don't want to, I guess, fully manifest or speak that out. And so they try to just play it off as this sort of half support.
They think about how twisted feminism, quote unquote, feminism has become. Their arguments, you know, in order to exclude anybody in the trans category, you have to reduce women to reproductive capacity, which is, in my opinion, extremely anti-feminist. I don't want to put those women down either, and I know you don't want to either, because I see...
Guys, they're throwing the deportees out of the planes and into the ocean. No,
they're like, oh, we respect Leah as a woman.
I don't want to put women down, but I'm going to go and swim against them, even though I'm 18 inches taller and still have an Adam's apple. And look,
a swinging dong, bro.
The Will Thomas thing, man, I tell you, I held out hope to the very end. I was like, please let this dude be the most based guy ever, who's been doing the Alex Stein the entire time, and then just was like, do you see what I did to you all? It would have been perfect, but instead he's just a communist like all the others.
No, and it wasn't the story. Like, my wife follows this stuff more than me because it's, you know, it's an existential threat to actual women, but like apparently like him and his boyfriend like remove their testicles and carry them around in a jar or something crazy. Oh, God. So you didn't know that.
You should put that on TikTok. My eyes.
He could be on TikTok. He could be on TikTok and he could be getting all the views that you're not. Anyway, all of this stuff, it indicates kind of a bigger problem, which I think is 1, Chinese infiltration, 2, the people that are supposed to be like stopping it don't have the tools to do it. So we're going to talk about bureau stuff in just a second, because we did read a pretty ridiculous, like, first of all, I don't know if AI is generating these like multi-paragraph like news press releases that Deputy Dan must spend hours on.
He's either getting AI or he's paying a hefty government salary to a support staffer.
Just so bad. It's so stupid and pathetic. All right, let's talk about something while we're talking about AI, while we're talking about this sort of technology stuff. We'll just go and do a quick read from my friends over at Silent. I'm super excited about the new bag I've got from them, guys. I've got the E3 Everyday Faraday bag. It's a really comfortable backpack. I've more and more liked the style of that bag, which is kind of similar to the Go Ruck as far as like it's a rectangle and it's not Jan sporty where it's like sagging in the butt end. Anyway, if you're worried about government, if you're worried about big tech, if you're worried about TikTok, corporate America, criminals, whatever it may be, trying to compromise your privacy, access your RF data, give all your stuff out, you can stop all that cold in its tracks with a product from Silent. They make Faraday products. One, it's a great way to get peace of mind that you're just going to be like not having a phone interrupt you in the same way that we do every morning here on the podcast. We throw the phone in this little sleeve and it shuts it down from the outside world. It blocks all RF. That's going to be your radio signals, whether it be Bluetooth, whether it be Wi-Fi, whether it's anything else that's trying to come in and out the actual phone signal. It keeps those things at bay, and it does actually work, which is not the case for most Faraday products. Most of them have leaks. I found that out when I was in the bureau working with them. You can check out their backpacks. They make phone sleeves like I've got here. They've got pants if you are so inclined. There are reasons that you might want to use those. They have a signal blocking technology that is patented. It gives you peace of mind that your data is not going to go out there in the world. It stops you from what's called ubiquitous technical surveillance, which means that all of your signals can actually be tracked simply by who you are and what signal ID you have. They can find out where you're moving. So if you guys want to stop all that, if you need to go do dastardly deeds, or maybe you just want a little bit of privacy and you go walk in the woods and not have the government track you, you can do so by going to silent.com/Kyle. Again, SLNT.com/Kyle. It's Silent without the vowels. You get 15% off. You get free shipping on qualified orders. They make an awesome product. When you guys get to, like, you know that we kind of do things over here where if I'm advertising for it, I actually really like it. That's kind of how it works. I make people send me a product before I check it out and tell you guys I'm into it. This is a really cool bag. And then we're going to do another breakdown. I needed probably over the 4th of July weekend. We'll do that. So slnt.com/KYLE, link in the show description. All right, Steve, you're back on the screen. And we're going to do the Chinese spy thing because I want to break it down with you. You didn't work CI, correct?
Nope, never did.
Did you ever notice anybody that was working CI had a lot of time to work out in the gym?
That and do SWAT. And they were very happy for the chance to go do SWAT because they got to go get out of the office at least 4 days a month, and that doesn't even include operations.
The Justice Department has charged 2 individuals with acting as agents of the PRC, the People's Republic of China, government. Arrest disrupted the clandestine PRC Ministry of State Security Intelligence Network operating inside the United States. They were 2 nationals of the PRC who made their initial appearances in Portland. This is a broad and far-reaching case. So many stats to be claimed on this case, Steve Friend. It was a combination of the Portland, Oregon field office, the Houston, Texas office. The charges are out of the Northern District of California. Let's see who else is involved in this thing. 2 PRC defendants. They're in their 30s, 38 and 39-year-old men with names that are impronounceable to me. One goes by Ryan. The other guy is like Yuan Shen. Came in here, in and out for several years, dropped off as much as $10,000 in cash for whatever people are interested in. $10,000 to like $80,000 or $90,000. That's transactional amounts for espionage. So that means you're usually paying for secrets, and that's the kind of dollar amounts we'd expect to see. The people that think they're going to get millions of dollars for selling out their country are crazy. I've seen $50,000 and $60,000 payments for people that are established sources that have been working for a while. All of this stuff looks like nothing was compromised, as is usual. It does seem like they were actually being fed information, and none of these people are actually on the employ. In other words, they are not PRC intelligence assets. Are you familiar with the concept of the co-optee versus the intel officer?
Well, isn't the co-optee somebody who is like actually like an American that they're able to like bring over, and the intel officer is somebody that they're able to like take from the outside and install?
So the intel officer would be someone who is actually like our CIA case officers.
Yeah.
The co-optee is what we would usually call assets, or you might even call what is the other? They call them agents over in the CIA. But the idea would be the same kind of people that are
it's a source.
Our national resource, yeah. So they're running a source, but they're running them as an asset. So because what the Chinese have realized is that they can't actually run their intel officers here in the United States. It exposes them to too much, particularly if they get caught. So what they do is they get a business person or somebody who has plausible reasons to be here. Students by the hundreds of thousands come in here, and they're all required to work on behalf of the PRC if necessary. And if they find an opportunity, then you're going to go out there and have them exploit that opportunity. And if they get nabbed, then the Chinese don't care because they didn't. This claim, which is quite interesting, in the actual in this complaint or in this press release about it, is talking about how the PRC spends years and years training these people up, and the fact of the matter is they get some training, but not years and years because they're not the actual case officers. What they forget to say is that the people who are actually running this op are totally safe and they're not leaving China. They'll only meet in third countries, which are going to be non-US controlled interests, non-US like solid allies. So they go to Africa and stuff like that.
No extradition.
Spain. Well, there could be extradition. It's not places where there's likely to be a strong U.S. intelligence foothold or where our law enforcement reach is very strong. So in any case, $10,000 dead drop payment, which sounds kind of splashy, but again, not that huge, was done in a classic dead drop, which was a day-use locker at a recreational facility in Livermore, California. So this is all outside of San Francisco. So that's the other field office that was involved. And when you go down and read like the number of people that were involved, this is what blows my mind. We got 2 arrests. Bongino yesterday said there are 5,000 open intel cases, and 800 of them have been opened up this year, which is about 16% of the total casework that the FBI is working on have been opened up recently. That tells you that that is part of their agenda. A lot of these things will go on for 5, 8, 10 years. It says the San Francisco field office led the investigation. They provided valuable assistance by FBI Portland, FBI Houston, FBI San Diego. NCIS was also involved. The National Security and Special Prosecution Sections of the United States Attorney's Office for the Northern District of California, the National Security Division of the Counterintelligence and Export Control System was involved. And all of these things are going to have prosecutions in the District of Oregon, the Southern District of Texas, and the Southern District of California, as well as the Northern District of California, and then Portland. So everybody is involved for 2 guys.
The FD 954 is for dozens of people. We're going to have this case on it for years on end as people continue to brief up having this career case, having in some way had a tangential responsibility for this big counterintelligence case, which lasted like 3.5 years. And they would have let an incalculable amount of sensitive information go to China just to keep this case so they could have a career case.
So this is this thing that I talked about with George Hill this morning. He gave me a buzz like while I was still waiting on my coffee to brew up. And the scary thing is that the George Hill, when he left the NSA, so if you guys don't know, George Hill is an FBI whistleblower. He's a friend of the program. He's a suspendable. He's the guy that let people know that January 6th was a whole of, let's call it America effort, where Bank of America went and voluntarily gave secretive bank information over to the FBI so they could track down these dirty J6ers. The crazy thing was, George said that he got bumped right when he left NSA and went over to the FBI.
Yeah.
He'd spent a bunch of money. He moved up to Boston. So theoretically, he could have called personal. Usually they look for financial vulnerability or like disgrievances. And he could have said, I don't like the move that I made. I don't like the FBI. Like, I don't have any money. And, he could have been run as what we call a double agent. Now, the FBI office that I worked at, I was really excited about double agent operations. It's their favorite. Because if you can run a DA, that's like Statville. You're going to get all the stats. Running a double agent operation means you collect money, you get information, you can do it indefinitely. You're going to leak over only the information that you want the Chinese to go. So it could be a disinformation op. Rather than do that, they just went into observe and report, what George calls voyeur mode. They watched it, same as this, and basically got nothing out of it. Got no disinformation. They got no and zero arrests. From people who legitimately bumped him more than once.
They shelved him for like a year, and he was a capable, competent, experienced intel analyst. And they basically were like, "You can't do anything because you've got some sort of exposure at this point." So until we
and not only that, but George had spent time in hostile nations working unarmed on behalf of the NSA. So he actually had like behind the wire, outside the wire intel experience. Doing it in the United States is a slam dunk. What do you think these 2 individuals, this guy Shen and Lei, are charged with when it comes to the actual charge that was levied after this attempting to compromise U.S. naval assets and being in multiple districts and all that? What do you think?
Wire fraud.
They got hit actually with 18 USC 951. And 951 is the criminal charge that says you are acting as an agent of a foreign government without being declared.
Like Mike Flynn?
It's not a FARA violation, which goes under Title 22. It's like the criminal version therein.
Okay.
And so it is a felony, but it's a significantly lower felony. I'm sure they have multiple instances of it. But
so they came in over the top with a lower charge than like espionage or something.
No espionage, yeah. Which means to me that they probably didn't actually send information over. We'll find out more. We'll keep watching this case. The thing that concerns me is that, one, this started under the FBI, because this is what the FBI actually does transactionally. This is normal FBI work. And what you're seeing is the current guys are so desperate for a win that they're out there going to tout anything that happens as like, we nailed it. Mm-hmm. We did this for you. We protected America, and God bless America and those who keep her safe or whatever, right?
The monetary amount, you said, $10,000 to $80,000, that's typical. Is this might be a if or and also situation. Is that amount normal because it's enough to entice a person to do it without like having life-changing money where they could just walk away and lose their access? Or is it more to like addict them to that amount of money, and because it's not life-changing, they're going to come back for more?
It's because people actually have no money in America, and they make terrible
Especially
financial decisions,
workers.
and you can get people to compromise for the lowest amount of money that there is. Yeah. So you might make millions of dollars if you do it for 20 years, but you're not going to do it millions of dollars in a couple of fell swoops. It's not going to happen. And a big, like high 6-figure or like low 7-figure payout is like a buyout relocation at the end. We used to have like a standing offer, and I can't remember how many million it was. It might have been like $5 million, that if you were a Russian agent working for KGB, or if you were working for FSB or something like that, and you wanted to defect to the United States with secrets, we would pay you a full-time relocation. And it would be like a $5 million buyout. And same thing for the Chinese. It's like an open offer. It might be $2 million, but it's something enough to get your life set up here in the United States. So that's how you end up. Like that has to be the final straw. But first, they're going to want to validate who you are. They're going to want to make sure that you give all the stuff. And so it'll be small payments. It's transactional espionage money. So all of this stuff is kind of wild. Dude, this leads you to this place where you have to ask whether or not people even know what they're talking about when they're out there making these claims. This is Eddie Smith. I was on his podcast a year ago. I think I played this to you before we got started. He just clicked this out there, and he asked if I was a prophet, because I'm talking about Bongino here. This is the attitude of a skeptic. By the way, I've been consistent on this, and I think it's useful for people to realize. If you're not looking at Kyle Seraphin and going, does Kyle Seraphin have the ability to know about this? Does Steve Friend have the ability to know? Does Candace Owens have the possibility of having Donald Trump call her to stop the Ukraine war? You're being fooled. And so this is the way that a skeptic must work. Here's a little clip from that. It's like 30 seconds.
And so if I read a news story, it's like, what are they trying to tell me here? What are they trying to not tell me? What are they trying to push forward that's keeping from something else? And so if you approach everything as a skeptic, and that means all the people that you want to believe too. You mentioned, my buddy Dan Bongino. I listen to Dan and I go, does Dan know what he's talking about on this? Is there more going on here? Is he not allowed to say what he needs to say? It doesn't matter who it is. If you assume that just because the source is good, that everything they say is correct, you'll get lured into traps, because we all get lured into traps.
Fact check that.
I agree with it. And it reminds me of a conversation I had very early on with Cheryl Atkinson. She came to my house to interview me, and she said, and great humility, really nice woman. She says, Steve, just because I work in the news doesn't mean that I know all of the news. So I might ask you questions, and because you're so like neck deep in this, you're going to think like, well, how do you not know these things? She goes, I don't know these things. And that to me spoke well of her character, but I think there's so much pressure on a lot of these content creators to be like, oh, I had to be the arbiter and the truth teller on all things. That's why I'm going to talk about Russia and Ukraine, and then I'm going to talk about virology, and I'm going to talk about tariffs, and I'm going to talk about the Doge. I mean, these things, like, you can't possibly be a subject matter of expert on everything unless you're Kyle Seraphin and you're a pig stunt / Wolverine.
Steve, what I want to do is I want to call you as a Fox News producer, and I'd like you to talk about the ballistics and the possibility of a second shooter at Butler, PA. Would you come on as a ballistics expert? You were on SWAT.
I have a time conflict because I'm scheduled to go talk about Russia and Ukraine on Newsmax. Sorry.
If you guys don't realize the sort of a tongue-in-cheek humor we're doing here, we get these calls all the time, and they'll be like, hey, you know about this thing, like, you're in the FBI. Can you talk about like money laundering and white collar fraud? It's like, I know people who investigated it, but I'm not your guy. Like,
I was on a reservation, so
yeah. So
not your Huckleberry. But
Yeah,
they
not
just
your
need
guy.
to fill that time before
Right.
they bring up the next reverse mortgage commercial, which is breaking my heart because Tom Selleck is doing them, and now he's got the Madden curse. How much longer are we going to have Magnum PI with us?
Oh, I love Magnum PI. I don't know. I actually, in recent days, I bought shorts that are reminiscent of Magnum PI, specifically because I love that style. I want
Guys out, thighs out. Love
Bro,
it.
I've been okay. So for 2 days in a row, I'm trying to get myself into the Steve Friend almond body situation. And I realized that the only reason that when I run, I always get injured is because my autonomic nervous system knows my pace, but my body is not prepared to do that pace because my ligaments and my joints are not happy with me, and neither are my tendons. And so I always pull a muscle, and then I'm like 3 days in, and then I quit because I'm injured, and I'm like, this sucks. So I went to a treadmill. So I've been doing 2 days of treadmill, and I'm feeling decent about that. My brain is fairly clear from doing so. But I'm running in like Tom Selleck shorts, Magnum PI style. So I look like either like a short 70s basketballer or like I don't know, like a heavy set SEAL from Hawaii in the 70s. I'm like a much heavier, stockier version than Magnum was always like long and lean.
You need knee-high tube socks.
When I grow up,
chucks.
I want to be when I grow up, I want to be more like Magnum PI, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think I'm growing up any further. So I'm running in these like shorts, and I catch a glimpse of myself every once in a while in like the gym mirror, and I just look over. I'm like, that dude is freakish. What's wrong with those legs? It does not look like a person that should be running for any distance. So maybe that's why I always have problems. I got some things wrong with me mentally. I pulled this clip because someone dropped this in on me the other day. It reminded me of something. Do you remember that we were going to get videos about something? We were going to get some videos. Who was going to give us videos? I feel like Hannity did a promise. It was this dude.
It was almost a month ago, I think.
Yeah,
we learned about Labradoodles being your only friends in Washington, and the videos are coming.
Right. Okay. So this was a Hannity interview on Fox. It was that guy who's excited about Intel. I mean, this is complete capture for whatever it's worth, folks. This is what complete capture is. I didn't realize this tactic had been around as long as it is in the Dan Bongino world. This is why I continue to bag on the guy, because you could just be honest or you could just shut the F up. That'd be fantastic. He doesn't do it. He always addresses things, but he like shoves it down the line, and he knows you're going to forget about it. So here's the story about Epstein on Hannity, and this was on June 5th. This is a month ago now.
My comments were clear. I'm not paid for my opinions anymore. I work for the taxpayer now. I'm paid on evidence. That's it. The evidence we have in our files clearly indicates that it was, in fact, a suicide. We do have video. It's not the greatest video in the world. I don't want to set expectations on fire. However, the video does show in that specific block that he goes in, made a phone call. You'll see 12 hours of guards going to basically check on him, come back. You'll see no one really comes out in that bay, in that area, than him. There's no one in there. When you combine that with the other evidence we will be releasing in the coming weeks, we're still finalizing some of the products. I think it's pretty clear.
So what did you think about the video when you watched the Epstein video of the prison?
Still waiting.
Any day now you'll get that, huh? Do you think maybe next week would be a time for that? Would that be a good time? Like maybe next week?
Actually, maybe Friday, July 4th, we'll get it as a Friday news dump.
I don't know.
How about this concept?
So here's the thing. Hold on. Let me play you this thing, because this is not a new tactic. I didn't realize that this was out there, but one of our listeners played this for me. Do you remember that there used to be a guy named Joe Armacost that was part of Dan Bongino's podcast? He helped him launch the thing.
Yeah.
And then they had this
of the Bongino rule.
There was this like mysterious parting, and people didn't know what it was, and some people said it was because of alcoholism or some other things, but like the guy helped him launch the entirety of the thing. It'd be like me just cutting off producer Phil because something happened in his life, and it's like, I'm done with you. Like, how many things would have to happen for me to cut out Phil? Like, I don't know that enough things could. We've been through much together. If you started going Candace Owen on me, like, I might have to fly out there and do an intervention.
Yeah.
I'm not going to just like go like, well, Steve is dead to me forever. I don't even do that with people that have clearly gone like a little bit nutty, like our buddy Alpha Luna. Like, Alpha has gone a little crazy.
I love Ryan Matta.
I love Ryan Matta too. Ryan Matta's full nuts. Like, Ryan, if you're listening, stop flying around the world and interviewing people in Africa. Like, what are you doing, dude? So we love Ryan. We're not going to like cut ties with the man or say that we no longer, and we're certainly, if there was an opportunity where we can continue to help him out. Like, if it was an alcohol thing, wouldn't you want to like put him into rehab or help him out? Isn't that a thing that people in America can understand? They can. I don't know what the deal was, but listen to this, because we're going to find out in 1 week. By the way, this is like over a year ago. This is like 2 years ago.
I know there were a bunch of questions today. Listen, I'll explain to you more next week. It's been a tough time for me, but I had to separate with Joe. So that's the story, folks. There's certain things I have to, out of respect for him. Joe's a good guy that I have to keep between us. And I hope you understand that, but I had to move on. So maybe explain some more in the future, but it's been a tough week for everybody.
Maybe I'll tell you more next week.
And
just never did.
The passage of time and the news cycle and people get distracted. I want to introduce this idea. The communists in this country, they love that word democracy.
Yes.
And it basically just need to insert, well, you've pointed out like bureaucracy could be it, or democracy could just be like things we like. If you were to sub it out like ad lib style, that would be. I think transparency is the exact same thing for the Bonginos and the Cash Patels at the FBI. Like, transparency just means like things that we like. So they think like, we're going to be transparent. We're not really going to be transparent, but we're just going to like advertise that we're doing things that are good in the interest of transparency. We're not going to give you what we promised you, but you were interested in the Epstein list. So we're going to give you something that's tangentially kind of sort of like that, like Operation Cross Country. We'll just rename it and be like, look, we're taking down the pedophiles. That's exactly what we do.
That's it. That's correct. Yeah. It's troubling to me because it tells me a lot about the American people's like the amount of fickle people that were like, I'm on team Elon. I'm thinking about buying a Tesla. It's so based. And now they're like, Elon's a dick. Like, screw him. I hope his company burns. Like, screw you, dude. Stay with your rockets. Like, you can't have a third party. Anything that's not MAGA. God forbid you make me agree with flipping Bernie Sanders because Bernie is not my favorite person, as you well know. The people who love it, like, they know. Bernie's going to say some things that I don't agree with. And then he's going to say some things that are eminently true. I don't think the Republican Party is full of extremists. I'd say they're actually the opposite. Would that make sense to you?
I think that you have the milquetoast Mitt Romney sorts that are the actual Republicans in the Republican Party.
And then there's like, if you were a Republican, you'd be the rhino.
I'm the rhino if I was a Republican.
Yeah. So my argument continues to be conservatives are the rhinos within the GOP. I had this funny question with a couple of people. Some people I've met in real life that like I like as human beings. They seem really nice. And they're like, why won't you help us take over the Republican Party, Kyle? I'm like, well, all of you people tell me that you're the real Republicans. You say it all the time. Why do you not have the party that you really are? Maybe because real Republicans are not you. Like conservatives are the fringe. And so they don't represent us. And so anyhow, here's Bernie Sanders saying some things that I disagree with. And then he immediately pivots to the actual truth, which is that we've gotten to this cult of personality situation. Are Republicans right-wing extremists? No. Are they Stalinists? No. That's absurd and ridiculous.
Bernie Sanders would like Stalinists.
Dude, so the guy who like honeymooned in Moscow probably doesn't get to tell us about Stalinists, but his assessment, and by the way, it's the same thing is true about the Democrat Party. This worship of cult of personality. AOC, if she can't do it, no one can, right? Like she's our man.
If you tell somebody in the Republican Party that they're not MAGA, that's basically the N-word for them at this point. Like
right.
The level of offense that comes when you say that.
What if someone called you and said, Steve, you're not MAGA?
Okay.
Accurate. True.
Because I don't have an idol. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I'm far more right wing than whatever MAGA is. Like I'm America only. Like I was cheering for the washed up people, the deportees that were thrown out and ended up in Italy. I'm cheering for that. I'm cheering for all the crazy. Anyway, Bernie Sanders making a really unsettling point after he makes some, like Bernie Sanders nonsense. Because he can't say things that are always true, but there's always an element of the truth in the lie.
The Republican Party has not just become a right-wing extremist party. In many cases, it's become like a Stalinist party, a cult of the individual. And what the party is about now is that Trump says something, and if you have an independent thought, if you disagree with Mr. Trump, if you think maybe what he's proposing doesn't work for your constituents, you're out of here. You raise your voice, and in 5 minutes, they will be announcing a primary to your election. So what happened is Tillis thought that this was a bad piece of legislation for North Carolina. He's right. It was. And the result of that is Trump said, good, we're going to primary you. You have the same thing in the House, with the very few people who are prepared to disagree with Trump. So right now, the Republican Party people are just afraid to dissent. And all you have to do is say, I love President Trump. I will do anything and everything he says. Hey, that's what being a candidate in the Republican Party is today. Pretty pathetic.
What's crazy to me is, Steve, he's not that wrong.
No.
You're getting a lot of that stuff on the right. But what's crazy is that the people that voted against the bill, every Democrat voted against the bill. But not because they were like, it spends too much money and it doesn't give us what President Trump wanted, or it doesn't give us what the American people want or my constituents want. What they voted against it is like, it's not lib enough. It doesn't give away much shit. Like, we got to do more free stuff. Yeah. So you could have people like Rand Paul and Tom Tillis vote against it. And actually, I think was it Collins? Yeah, Collins voted against it as well. So those are your senators that voted against. And they voted against it for the exact opposite reason that the 47 Democrats voted against it. By the way, it passed the Senate tiebreaker with J.D. Vance. But go ahead.
This is like the right track, wrong track polling that you see coming out that they always like tout like, oh, 70% of America says the country's on the wrong track. I'm like, well, like 35% of saying that we're not communist enough. And the other 35% are saying like we need to be more small government. So strange bedfellows can both agree on the same concept that the system is broken, which is why Bernie Sanders actually has an appeal on the communist left, because he says like he identifies the problem, like the system is broken. And then his solution, though, is like we should just make it double down on how bad it is. Like that's how it would be improved.
Right. It's not well, the things that you think are bad are not bad enough, and then they would be fine. It's like, okay, that's terrible. So, by the way, does that guy not look like what you would think a senator looks like?
Oh, he's straight out of Central Casting. He just needs that commercial with the deep voiceover and the American flag waving behind him as he has like a nondescript, somewhat pretty wife and 2 kids, and says that, you know, I've lived in this state for just the amount of time that's necessary. And let me talk to you about my time in the service when I did 4 years, never really in any kinetic situation. And
have you noticed my jawline? It is quite prominent and strong. I'm also taller than the people that stand next to me, and that's why I'm a leader. I can look above the heads of the crowd, and I can make great decisions. I've never done anything hard, and I've never said anything that people disagreed with, and that's what makes me the right choice for whatever it is that you want it to be.
What's that callus on the hand situation for John Thune?
What's going on with this? Why is he making a fist? Who's being punched? Or whatever that is.
He's doing rock'em sock'em robots.
Bro, I don't know, but I do think I might actually have this really great, I just did like an ambiguous quote of nonsense, right? And I think I actually have an ambiguous quote of nonsense that I saw yesterday that made me kind of laugh. And so I want to share it with you because that's the kind of thing that we do here. We share things that are fun. Ready, Steve Friend? Here
I don't think farts are funny, but everyone else in the...
That is not what...
It is good.
That is good. No, that's the fart thing, but that is not what I actually just queued up. Come on now. Here we go. Okay. There we go.
You have nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing like strange or nefarious going on. Yeah. I mean, and even if there was, you'd never know it.
Right, yeah. And, sorry, wait, what?
Anything that may or may not be afoot shouldn't concern you, because anything that would or wouldn't happen would do so without your knowledge or awareness. And even if it did happen, you wouldn't understand what it was or wasn't. So it's all perfectly fine as far as you're concerned. You have nothing.
I'm pretty sure that's the Republican Party and the Democrat Party talking about this bill. Because I'm reading CBS about it. Did you see some of the stuff that passed with it?
It's not worth even because like each side has so much because they've crammed into all these pages good stuff and bad stuff. So no matter what, where you vote, Tom Massey's talked about.
It's not enough bad stuff, and they haven't removed enough of the good stuff for people who are the quote-unquote real Republicans, a.k.a. what you and I call rhinos. Mm-hmm. It's not. So the first thing that CBS covers, they've pared it down from 954 pages to 887 pages. And the first thing that CBS thinks is really important for you to understand, it's Medicaid restrictions.
Oh.
Now, what they don't cover in the CBS story, which I think is fascinating, is they don't talk about how it removes at least $24,000 of tax liabilities for Social Security and $48,000 if you're married and filing jointly. Which is a lot of money for some people. That's probably like a chunk of what my parents bring in as retired people. So they don't cover the Social Security tax elimination piece because we have to cover it from a totally nonpartisan angle where we have editorial discretion here. The legislation includes restrictions on Medicaid, which allows people to go wah, without understanding what it actually is restricting.
You have to work if you're of working age.
The legislation imposes restrictions on some able-bodied adults and it has more frequent eligibility checks so we don't just give you Medicaid forever.
So it's a hand up.
It's literally
a hammock,
Hitler.
and it's not a hammock. It's a safety net.
It's literally Hitler. I'm pretty sure they're throwing the migrants out of the back. The deportees are being thrown into the ocean with this stuff.
Basically, Stalinists.
So the best part, though, is that the Senate parliamentarian determined that one measure that Republicans are really key on, which was that they were going to cut funding for Medicaid, providing health care to undocumented immigrants, aka illegal aliens, people that have broken the law and are in our country illegally. That actually could not be passed through the reconciliation process because of the Byrd rule. So they actually needed to do a full Senate vote, and they got 55 or 66 yays. So it didn't meet the 60 threshold, and therefore it could not be included. So illegal aliens, who we were told were not getting Medicaid, are still not going to be unpermitted from this. Then also the other piece of it that was in there was banning Medicaid from covering gender transition. Can't do it. They couldn't actually get that vote in. So it's watered down, weak, mealy mouth garbage on all this stuff. Again, that's the same parliamentarian that removed the stuff about gun laws, which is it's very troubling to me. I wanted to play the gun piece. Go ahead and respond first, and then we'll do a gun piece.
Just objectively, like, it doesn't matter who's the president and which parties are in control of Congress. It should not be a surprise to you for the elected officials to say, like, hey, we're not going to give illegal aliens medical care. That shouldn't be like a debatable issue. That's just an objectively normal good thing. Like, it never should have been an issue, but if they uncovered it, it should be immediately rescinded. But we can't get that done, which shows that really the Republicans that are there are not the sort that you and I would typically associate with small government people who want the government to exist basically to do like the smallest amount of things, like defend the border and leave me alone.
Okay. I didn't know I was going to do this, but now I'm going to pull it out. So one of James O'Keefe's former employees reached out to me and asked me to promote something that she's doing. And I'm going to promote it, but not the way that she wants. Did I share this with you yesterday?
Oh, typical Kyle Seraphin fashion.
Yeah, we're just gonna wing it out here. Her name's Kayla. She reached out to me. She was wronged on the filming of the Line in the Sand movie. And by wronged, I mean that James O'Keefe didn't give her credit for the things that she did in the titles of the credits. So she did all the work that she did. She got paid for all the work. Her major complaint was she was not allowed to get up and accept accolades with the team that she helped put together. So she's like really upset. Not that James O'Keefe is a scumbag, but that he acted like as a scumbag when it came to giving her credit for things. And that's because he's a meanie and he doesn't like women. Anyway, we're not the same is my point. Right. And so she sent me this clip that she did with Chanel Rion over on OAN, who I've been on her program a number of times. I like Chanel. She seems really squared away. And the whole point is that they did a deep dive into the American infrastructure and the failing systemic problems of the American economy that does not protect the average person. And so I'm reading this. This tells you the kind of people that are around James O'Keefe. It actually tells you a lot, I think. And it tells you a lot about the people that are in the quote unquote right-wing movements and what they actually think. Are you ready for this?
Said.
I listened to the video clip and I wrote, the point seems to be that people are irresponsible and they make bad monetary decisions. So we have to quote unquote give them some relief. Did I get that correct? And she said, well, that's one way the narrative is often framed, but it oversimplifies a much more complex reality. I feel like I'm talking to Grok. Yes, some individuals make poor financial decisions, but it doesn't explain a broader systemic trend that we're seeing: the rising costs of living, stagnant wages, medical debt, student loans, housing shortages, and a shrinking middle class. When 60% of Americans can't cover a $500 emergency, the issue isn't just individual irresponsibility. It's a system that increasingly sets people up to fail. So the relief is not about rewarding bad behavior. It's about creating breathing room that's needed to restore stability and that people can make better decisions long term. That is actually the squishy part of the Republican Party, as I understand it. It's like none of this stuff is conservative. There's no evidence that people will make better decisions when given better opportunities, because they made bad decisions when they had better opportunities back then. People have always made bad decisions. There's a reason why we have striations. Some people just make bad decisions, Steve, it turns out.
Well, it's the compassion that is overwhelming.
Exactly
it's the feminine nature as opposed to being the masculine, like more objective, where I could basically dispel this entire thing in 30 seconds and say, like, you're going to flood the system with lots of money. Yep. And as a result, the cost of living is going to go up and more people are going to be in a desperate straits, and they're going to come to you and say, we need relief. So you're going to flood the system with more money and prices are going to go up, and it's going to almost like cycle. It's almost like you're causing the problem so that you can continue to push forward your solution, which in effect means more government.
It's freaking Bernie Sanders. I actually said this the other day, and it was the same idea, exactly what you just said. I said, when Republicans tell me that the only thing that needs to happen is real conservatives need to take control of the GOP, this is the argument for the third party or against it, that real conservatives need to take control of the GOP, and if you would just help us, Kyle, then we could get there. As Steve Friend, if you just got on board with us, then we would do it. I said, everything you just said has real communism has never been tried vibes.
Exactly the same.
That's the vibe I get from these people.
And then, and even if I said, all right, I'll give the old college try, within a week it would be, we can't fight on this one. We can't fight on this one if we're going to keep the coalition together, because it's not about solving problems. It's about acquiring power.
Let me read you the second follow-up to that, because I was like, I said on average, I said the stat that 60% of Americans don't have $500 on hand just tells you that the average American has average or below average IQ. Like that's just the bell curve, how it works.
99 and below is half the country.
And I said, the problem is that you've got people that make bad financial decisions. They have low financial acuity. Now, the answer to that is self-reliance. It's individual personal charity. It's the answer is like having good morals and looking out for your neighbors. Like, I'm not without compassion. Anybody who knows anything about me knows that, like, that's something that's very dear to my heart. If I have the means to help people, I will. In fact, if you ever come to me with something, my question is how do I help? I will volunteer helping ideas. That's just what I do. And that's not a self-praise. It's just like, that's the way I'm wired. I just think that a lot of people actually have that. I don't think it's unique. This woman wrote, to your point, I think we need to integrate tools like financial literacy education into our public schools. Man, you lost me right there.
Brought to you by the government, which has $37 trillion in debt.
Fair lending laws to prevent predatory debt cycles, living wages and workers' protections, affordable health care and housing reforms, community investment so people aren't forced into desperation. Blaming individuals ignores how the game is rigged from the start. The real path forward is combined with accountability and structural reform, because resilience isn't possible when the system is pulling the floor out from underneath people. And I said, weird, that sounds a lot like communism. I didn't realize that you were a leftist. These are the kind of people that are, quote unquote, in the conservative movement, that are making content that conservatives are consuming and think like these are our friends. Yeah. These are the people that are surrounding like the most conservative, capable, undercover grinder reporter in the world. It's so silly.
Just reciting the platform for the guy running for New York mayor right now.
I straight up said that. I said this is literally the Democratic platform. It's just a few years before it gets to where it is right now. Before they reach the inevitable conclusion, they need more money, they need more programs, they need more taxation just to level the playing field. This is Bernie Sanders 101. Level the playing field. We actually had the guy on, we had Cameron on do the Sunday sit down, and he made the playing cards. And the Bernie Sanders playing card is called Level the Playing Field. It's like it eliminates all billionaires or whatever. It's hilarious. I said the answer is always private charity. It's within your own community. It's not forcing me to participate. I help people I know because I know them. And I don't care about people that I don't know about because I don't care about them. I don't care about them because I don't know them. It's crazy. This like suicidal empathy, this, you know what it is? It's the same it's the same as this.
They're like, oh, we respect Leah as a woman, as a trans woman, whatever. We respect her identity. We just don't think it's fair. You can't.
That idea of fairness. How would you got a dude with a dong that's 6 inches or 8 inches taller than all the females that he's swimming against, talking about fair. Yeah. And he's in the right for the left.
He's in the right because we have to respect his feelings. We don't want to make him feel offended. Like Garrett and I talked about this on the AMRAD pod, and the point that I was making was, we have to do America. You have to say things that make people uncomfortable because people are just too darn comfortable, and like they're comfortable and they don't want to be mean. I don't hate that. Like you don't want to deliberately be a jerk to people, but it's going to take a couple jerks to like shift the paradigm over. And I remember like giving a specific speech. And I say, like, I don't say Democrats. I say, like, look, they're not Democrats, they're not progressives, they're not liberals, they're not hippies. They're godless, vicious, Marxist communists who would take your children away and put you in an encampment because you wouldn't get an experimental jab in your arm. And afterwards, a guy came up to me, he said, I'm a colonel with the Arizona National Guard, and I really just, I need you to soften your language. You're just going to turn people off. And I was like, sir, I don't want you in a foxhole with me because you don't know what time it is.
It's this time. These people know what time it is. You see on the screen here, this is outside of Los Angeles, or in the middle of Los Angeles, rather, on the 6th Street Bridge. Eviction moratorium now. Do you think he took time off work to go and like make that sign to not earn money so he can cry about this stuff?
No, he gets Medicaid.
They blocked a major bridge in Los Angeles. That's a huge thoroughfare. It's like 4 lanes on either direction. You could land a freaking plane on it. They did that in one movie. I can't remember what it was. It was some movie where they put down a private plane there. I think it was called SWAT. It was freaking SWAT, wasn't it? I knew we were going to get there. I knew we were going to get there, Steve. I'm so proud of you. Yeah, these idiots blocked it with like flipping tents and stuff. The answer was probably like send in bulldozers. But instead, what you have is a bunch of people that have that suicidal compassion. And they're like, well, they're making a good point. Like the system is rigged and it's mean. It's like, yo, I told the lady too. I told this lady, I said, I went and my story is just, I use my story as anecdotal refuting of the retarded sort of points of crying about this stuff. It's like I had 14 months without a paycheck. How many months have you gone without a paycheck now at this point? Like you're unpaid, so people don't understand. You're not being paid.
No.
We don't. I don't pay you
10
for
months
appearances.
Been unemployed.
Because you had me as a friend.
Because you were my friend. Yeah.
Right. And there was a fellowship opportunity that was rescinded. And by the way, that guy now runs a government office called what? OMB?
Yeah, OMB. He's within the president's cabinet.
Yeah. So your former boss is now working in the government. That'll segue us nicely over to this little thing here. I just saw this, which was kind of crazy. Former FBI agent who was pardoned by Donald Trump, a guy named Jared Wise. I don't actually know Jared. I don't know anything about his story other than I kind of read it and like he was there, and he probably shouldn't have been attacked. He's now serving in the Justice Department. So people who were at January 6th that had to get pardoned by Trump, who have criminal records, don't have character issues, but Steve Friend has an issue. Do you want to tell people about the phone call you got, or do you want to leave that off the record? Because it's up to you.
The phone call that I got 4 months ago? Mm-hmm. Somebody in a position of prominence at the FBI called me up and said that they wanted me to be in an executive capacity on staff in leadership. And then I was a truth teller, had been sort of like proven and forged within the fires, and said, I'm willing to call a spade. And that I need to be there because the guys in charge, frankly, in their defense, like, they are not insiders. They don't know, and they know going in that they're going to have people that are tapping them on the shoulder, going to be talking past them. So that was the interest level. And I said, sure, I'm here. Here's a resource. I'm available for tasking. And that was 4 months ago. And then that's
a big nugget, Steve. That's kind of a big nugget here. The FBI is also moving into a new building right now. So they're moving into the Reagan building. They announced that yesterday.
Isn't that was in kind DC?
Yeah, that's in D.C. That's in D.C. And I guess it's a safe building, considering they just held Family Day in the unsafe Hoover building. But yeah, that was a big nugget you just dropped, wasn't it?
So what are your colleagues saying about this, that you're going to get out of the Hoover building?
We need a new headquarters very, very badly.
New headquarters proposal that we have.
This FBI is leaving the Hoover building.
He just gave up a big nugget.
For about a decade now, the FBI has been working on plans to move various functions and headcount to out of the National Capital Region.
If our people are going to be safe,
Because this building is unsafe.
be effective, and if we're going to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money,
And being good stewards of the taxpayer dollars,
we got to get them all in a modern, safe, efficient FBI headquarters.
we're going to give you a building that's commensurate with that. And that's not this place.
And so there is a big sum asked for in our budget to support that.
We're always going to fight for our personnel and for as much money as we can get.
He just gave up a big nugget.
Love the nugget, man.
The nugget. Sorry, everybody who can read between the lines can read the nugget nines. It wasn't Steve. I'm outing Steve because it bothers me dramatically that these people have gone out there and they're operating with without good faith. It's not good faith. What did we hear? They were going to move all these people out of the capital region. We were going to get them out of DC. So they're going to go to the Reagan buildings down the street.
Mm-hmm. Distinction without a difference, right? And I mean, and that goes down to even the moving of the personnel. Our footprint is 11,000, which the director didn't know. We had to tell him what the footprint actually was, so he knew
Asked
that.
us, like, how many people work in DC? And then, do you know what the other crazy thing? And I realized this the other day, and I think I was talking to Brandon Strzok on the phone, and we're having this conversation. We're belaboring the fact that if you say the truth about people that are quote unquote in the movement, then you're the problem. He's been calling out Scott Pressler as being a fake and a fraud and a liar, and there's plenty of people that have told me the same thing. It's not really my fight, but I understand it, and so the people that I agree with and that I think are honest have said it, which leads me to believe it probably is true. I'm a skeptic, but I also follow, like, when multiple voices are saying the same thing, it makes you start asking certain questions like, hey, is this got some merit? It probably does, especially when they're unrelated to each other. And he said, I see the same thing with you and the current FBI guys. He's like, you're consistent. You say the same thing. If you were suddenly changing, like you said, you were going to shut down the Hoover building day one and turn it into a deep state memorial. It's going to be a museum. What is that? You've now put a guy in DOJ that was at January 6th,
yes.
but you promoted the asshole that went after him, and you defended it in front of Maria Bartiromo. So he's a whistleblower. I've got a final little whistleblower piece here. We're going to talk about the kind of things that the word whistleblower is now making me not want to be a whistleblower anymore. I want to get away from it because Kilmar Abrego Garcia is as well. So let's first do this one real quick.
But you promoted Stephen Jensen, the architect of the FBI's overzealous January 6th investigation. I want the American public to realize what we did. That man was in a position where he literally fought back against the machine who was saying, we want to politicize this event. We want to politicize this event. And at the end of the day, remember, Maria, there's a chain of command here. So you can fight back your chain of command to a certain degree before they fire you. And Steve Jensen and other folks were promoted because they embody what the American public demands of FBI agents.
Compliance with the FBI.
Did you hear that at the very end, he caught himself? He realized what he had said, and he put a bow on it and tried to slap a period at the end of that sentence because they, embody what the American people. I'm just going to try to say something innocuous here because what he was going to say was just followed orders, and he realized that would have been a bridge too far.
if you say that he was just a good American, which is the accusation that I may or may not have leveled in some emails that were pretty choice to the same people like Steve Jensen at that same level or higher, it's over. Kilmar Abrego Garcia cites a whistleblower claim in a bid to keep his civil case alive. I shit you not. Like, this is the story, and this is coming from MSNBC. Consider the source, and you consider what the story is going to be. He's back in the United States. He's facing criminal charges, but his lawyers are trying to keep a civil case alive that prompted his return. The Trump administration argues the civil point is now moot, but the lawyers say that it's not, and one of the reasons they cite is potential for contempt sanctions against the government in its conduct in the case. And one of the most high-profile examples of President Donald Trump's second-term administration's resisting court orders. I think we just had a Supreme Court decision that just said that district courts don't get to make that kind of decision. But what the hell do I know? A court retains jurisdiction to enforce its own orders and impose its own sanctions and contempt, said a district court judge, Paula Zinish? X-I-N-I-S. You're not allowed to do that in America. You can't start your name with an X.
No.
Not your last name, at least. I'm pretty sure that's not
unless
allowed.
Joe Biden appoints you.
They cited the new whistleblower claims from a former department lawyer who worked with Emil Bove, who was the DAG, the Deputy Attorney General, who said during his confirmation hearing. So now we have whistleblowers from DOJ working against DOJ. It goes to my point that was yesterday, which is that if you do not gut the administrative or deep state, then the administrative state or deep state will gut you. That's what it does. And this has been known since Machiavelli, since freaking Machiavelli wrote his treatises on how to maintain power in free states and principalities.
It's time immemorial. There's a reason that you say like personnel is policy. Total personnel warfare.
Right. You know what that looks like in real life? You exile people or you execute them. The two E's were always used. You have to E the people that were in previous power lest they usurp what you're doing.
And you know, you're not in a kinetic conflict. So if you want to use the metaphor of there could be collateral damage, like you might actually fire the wrong person, some good people. It's not permanent. It's not like they're collateral damage, like they're no longer alive. You can easily bring people back.
You can do it. If you do bring it back, you can press criminal charges and you can go and throw them in jail and you can put them in Alcatraz, Alligator Alcatraz. Are you a fan of Alligator Alcatraz or not? I assume yes.
Sure. I love it. We got this thing built in like 3 days in typical Florida fashion.
I'm sure that the construction is of the highest quality.
Wouldn't it be great if we had illegal aliens building Alligator Alcatraz?
Wouldn't it be great if somebody escaped and then got caught by the alligators?
That would be tragic, but not as tragic as people getting dumped into the Mediterranean after traversing the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, you know, of all the places that I would go dump bodies from a plane, the Mediterranean would be low on my list. It's really it's kind of like a pissant little ocean as far as oceans go. It's like contained within a landmass.
Yeah, and
it's really not like a free range ocean. I don't know why you would choose that.
Too close to Western Europe, and they're like weak there. They play soccer.
They play soccer. I'm watching a show that's talking about that right now. They don't like being called soccer. They want to call it football, as you probably well know. A couple other little goofy stories. I did want to actually hit the last little pieces here on the big, beautiful bill that was like the sort of losses, and I got distracted by myself. One of the things that Trump claimed he was going to do was no taxes on tips. Confirm?
I mean, I would like to see my negotiation for my next employment to be all tip-based.
Correct, but it won't matter because the Senate and the House versions are different. And when they got the Senate version passed, the no taxes on tips is only on the first $25,000 worth of tips. So you're going to have to be in poverty, and most of your wages are still going to be taxed.
We're going to cap it because we have to get first fruits because we are the government.
So all of this kind of goes down. Somebody was like, yes, that's fine. Like, I like that. Like, that's a good decision. That's MAGA because, like taxes, like tips are income. I'm like, yeah, but all income taxes are theft. Like,
yeah,
we overthrew
That's again
a country.
why if you were to throw out the N-word epithet of you're not really MAGA, I would be fine with it because I was like, yeah, because I'm more conservative than that. Like the bodies flying into the Mediterranean isn't good enough. I want Trail of Tears, gunpoint, marching them to the southern border. Like that's where I'm at. So
it doesn't make any sense either because the same people there are the same ones that are like, it's 1776 again. Like they overthrew the strongest government and like the colonial power that ran us over a consumption tax.
Over a marginal
tax would have been
insane
insane.
Consumption tax.
Dude, pretty crazy. They want to, and so people are like, tax cuts are MAGA, tax cuts are conservative. It's like, no, you have to argue for every dollar you take from me. And this is the thing that I brought on yesterday's show. And it's such a departure from the founding principle of this country. I guess that's useful to talk about as we go into Independence Day and the reason why people threw off the yoke You have to argue that you have a right to any of my things. I had someone tell me the other day that the only people who should vote are the ones who pay property taxes. I'm like, okay, well, that should be no one then, because no one should pay property taxes. How dare the government act like that? I'm not a feudal serf. If I buy something, is it not mine? If the government makes me pay for it at the point of a gun, then I don't own it at all.
I mean, I want a justified, itemized list of why you're taking my money. Like we can even quibble about like taxation of theft, but if render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's. If you're gonna take that first fruits from me, I want to see where it's going. And if it's going to give medical care to illegal aliens, then I should say, no, I veto that. Instead, they're getting a 900, or now they've pared it down to an 885-page bill that has all this crap in there, so that nobody reads it, nobody pays attention, and they throw their hands up in the air and say, well, we really want to go home for July 4th and see the fireworks, so we just have to pass it because we're MAGA. And unless you pass this 800-plus page bill that has things in there that take away guns from people, then you're just not MAGA. And people get back off because they feel like they're insulted, and they get a case of the bad feels, and they get uncomfortable, and they don't want to say things that are hard, so they just kind of put their head down and go along with it and tell people like Kyle Seraphin and Steve Friend that, you just need to pare down your language a little bit. You're a little bit too harsh on these things.
We are too harsh on these things. There's this idea that any right given up to the government, you're probably going to have to take back with blood. Like, you probably are not going to be able to vote it. I actually was always I was super skeptical in my heart that they were ever going to do anything on the National Firearms Act. I did promise this video earlier, so I've got this sitting here queued up and I want to play it. This is the parliamentarian that said that you can't remove, it's not a financial consideration to remove illegal aliens from Medicaid. Right? That you can't take transgender surgeries and limit that from the states. The parliamentarian said this, that it needs to be a full Senate 3/5 vote. It has to be a 60% majority to be able to pass. So that's why, and of course they don't have that, so she knows this. And also the same thing about guns. And here is, I'm gonna have to look this up, representative. His name escapes me at the moment. I'll pull it up in a second here. Here's a discussion. This is put out by Gun Owners of America as sort of like just a little quick snippet of why we know this partisan idiot should have been fired. But of course, the Senate leader, hold on, what's he look like? He looks like this, John.
Look at that jawline.
It's so strong. He looks so honest.
Virile.
So much like there's no shenanigans going on. Here's the shenanigans.
However, the unelected Senate parliamentarian struck this provision down, erroneously claiming that it violated the Byrd Rule. I vehemently disagree with her, and I believe many of her rulings prove she's incapable of making sound, nonpartisan decisions. Let me be perfectly clear. The taxation and registration under the National Firearms Act are inseparably linked. The registration database is the method used by the government to account for the tax paid on each firearm by the serial number of the firearm. And I'd like to show you something. This is an example right here of the tax stamp itself, for any of you who want to look at it, all right? This is a tax stamp from an actual Form 4, National Firearms Act, NFA, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, Form 4. And it says right here, submit the appropriate tax payment, and we will affix the National Firearms Act stamp. And this is the stamp right here. As you can see, it has a serial number on it. This is actually the serial number of the firearm for which the tax was paid. And you have the date, 9/11/2022, and then you have another one right here, a different serial number for a different transfer tax, and another one, and another one, and another one.
The entirety, by the way, that's Andrew Clyde. He's from your alma mater, Notre Dame, so points to him for holding the line on this and not letting it go. But the entirety of that regime, that they would have a registration for firearms that are fully automatic, that are short-barreled rifles, that are short-barreled shotguns, that are going to also keep track of suppressors. The entire reason, Steve, is because they need to have a database of who has paid the $200 tax to the government. And if they remove the tax, then
they can't have the registration.
You no longer need to have a registration. So the argument was to get rid of all of them, and that it was obviously about taxes. Like, the entire reason for the registration was because of the taxes. The parliamentarian ruled that it was all about the registration, that it was a regulatory function, which was actually expressly deemed to be unconstitutional in 1937. So that cannot be. And what did we do? We had them roll over in the Senate and remove both pieces. What did we do? We had them roll over in the House and not give both pieces. They only did one.
And if you don't get on board, then you're not MAGA.
You're not MAGA. Anyway, so good for Clyde and Andrew Clyde. Like I said, if that's all we have is one guy that gets it, and he's actually showing the tax stamps. Like I have 14 of those damn things. Like I've spent my money. I'm on the registries, and I get it. And at the end of the day, I'd rather have the equipment than not. But the fact that I had to pay the government for the privilege of them keeping track of my own property, it's insane. It's nuts. You could make that damn thing at your house too for suppressors.
It's no different than paying the government for the right to own your own property. I mean, for where
all
you
of these
live.
things. They're all ridiculous. And I know you read the Declaration every 4th of July to your kids. So what was the purpose? Like, what was the guiding principle that those founders were like looking to instill as they went out there and crafted? Obviously, they didn't get the Constitution for years later, but what was their major thing? They wanted to secure like 3 fundamental things, it felt like.
Life, liberty, and property was basically it.
It was like the Lockean sort of like ideals of what a free man would be able to have access to. Yeah.
We've just
protected from force and fraud. That's the entire purpose of the government. Not educate people financially so that the systemic system will allow them to have room to breathe.
Not give them relief because the shrinking middle class, because we have too many people entering into the upper class, not because they're going the other way. And because people's financial literacy, they make bad decisions at every level because most people have a 99 IQ and below. And that's just the nature of man. And it's on them to be responsible for their own life and their liberty and their property. It's not daddy government's responsibility, which we've completely shifted entirely, done the photo negative of. Now we have to have an all-powerful big brother government, which looks out and takes things under consideration. Like we have to make sure that Will Thomas and his feelings are taken into consideration when he swims in a pool against girls, and that's going to be attached to federal funding for the university system.
They're like, oh, we respect Leah as a woman, as a trans woman, whatever. We respect her identity. We just don't think it's fair. You can't really have that sort of half support where you're like, oh, I respect her as a woman here, but not here.
He's right, by the way. I don't respect him at all, period. The end.
I like his traps, though. I wish I had like that sort of
well, that's a swimmer's thing. Yeah, that's a thing. All right, let me throw one last thing on the screen. I didn't show this yesterday, but I meant to. The argument is being made right now in, just again, consider your sources, consider what kind of nonsense is being pushed out on you and what sort of lies you're going to hear. ABC News is reporting a probe into the Idaho firefighter ambush subject by digging into his childhood and his gun familiarity. That's literally, like, I didn't create a slide for it, but I wanted you to see it. Probe into Idaho firefighter ambush suspect digging into childhood and gun familiarity is the name of like the worst headline I've ever read. A former classmate of the suspect also details his alleged extremist views. What sort of extremist do you think they would want to paint this guy with?
Nihilistic violent extremism.
No. They want to call him a Nazi. That's why.
Oh, okay.
Well, which is similar to nihilistic violent extremism.
Well, if he doesn't have any belief that if they hit a dry hole in the Nazism, they'll just say nihilistic, ergo still terrorist.
Still terrorist. Ready for this? They interviewed a former classmate of his. The classmate's first name is Dieter, Dieter, which is very Germanic to me. And Dieter claims that Rowley, this was this kid, his name was Wes Rowley, was someone who talked about Nazism. He was very pro-gun. He spoke about wanting to join the military, and he would make drawings of bombs, military vehicles, and got in trouble for drawing swastikas in a textbook once. He knew him until he was a freshman in high school. This was in middle school. And so now we've dug into his real ideology because everybody who draws, like, you remember when, you probably learned how to do it too. Like when you first learned what a swastika was, it's just lines connecting. And everyone's like, oh, that's kind of like an interesting little design. Then you're like, oh, that's like not a design that we tolerate here. But the design of it is like something as you learn how to move a pen and make right angles, people draw swastikas. Like, and he drew bombs and military vehicles, like boys do. That made him a Nazi. He was pro-gun. His family grew up around guns. And Wes was just being Wes. He apparently would say awful things about the border crisis. He said this is going back 5 years ago. Yeah, bro. Now you know. He also lied and claimed to have been born in Germany and be more German and patriotic than others, said a guy who hasn't seen this kid in 5 years. They moved away when he moved into high school. He hasn't seen him since they were like 14 or 15 years old. And
so
he's now
7 years. And he's going to ascribe those same beliefs to a person. How many people do you remember from middle school?
None of them. I do remember some of their names. Like I remember one guy that I went to high school with, but I don't know anything about him anymore. And I don't remember enough about it. So this is from his actual social media. This is Belarus. This is a brony video that is tagged with the hashtag furry, and I sell organs on the black market. Looks pretty weird. I sell organs. I don't know what any of that nonsense is, but all that stuff is super weird. And this is apparently from his social media that was pulled out by the Idaho Tribune. And of course, the Idaho Tribune, who, by the way, was the only people getting the story right on Patriot Front, they're also Nazis. You probably didn't know that, but they've also been alleged to be white supremacists. So
naturally, because they believe
anybody who I don't agree with is a Stalinist white supremacist.
Everything I like is democracy, and everybody who I disagree with is literally Hitler. Literally Hitler. That's kind of what I had. Do you want to do a little plug? Are you guys doing AMRAD over the weekend as you guys move on? And then I will play something that's fun because we need it. Planning out to do AMRAD tomorrow because today's only Wednesday, so we got to have the AMRAD pod tomorrow, Thursday, 10:30 Eastern time on rumble.com/AMRADpod. I'm going to spend the rest of my Wednesday planning out what I'm talking about. I don't have very much right now other than there'll be lots of black bills. That's what I guarantee. And if Garrett's able to make it, I know he's busy. It might just be me running solo, but I will endeavor to bring a biblical worldview and reference the big guy.
I'm for it. Okay. We're going to end with something that is very unusual, Steve Friend. This is a video clip that I found over on Instagram, and it is women singing and dancing about how psychiatric help used to be better when women were considered to be hysterical, and the treatment was orgasm and cocaine. I didn't know what I was turning on. My son and my daughter both crawled up next to me, so I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old watching this, and I got yelled at by my wife because I didn't know what was coming at the end of this either.
One taste type video.
Make sure you guys like this video before you get to the end of this thing. But here's the palate cleanse. We're going to go ahead and cleanse it, and I'm going to leave Steve on the screen for his reaction. I did kind of give away the joke, but I think you'll still appreciate it. Oh, why is it gone? No. Stand by. We got to get back to that.
To the doctor, they make you come and then your husband pays. I want to be a hysterical woman in the 1880s. Therapy-wise, it was the best time for the ladies. I don't want introspection, I don't want to grow if I have an inner child. I don't want to know, I don't want to analyze all my pain. I just want an orgasm and free cocaine.
That was the part that got me yelled at because that came out at the end and my wife was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was like, "I don't know. I didn't know she was going to say orgasms and free cocaine." Yeah, but she says, "I want to be a hysterical woman in the 1880s." We used to be a proper world and nation.
You tried so hard to get the trad wife, and now you're hoisted by your own petard. You can't watch these Instagram videos.
Yeah, she's just in there. She was actually baking, I think, too. I think she was like rolling out like
she's
fresh
making
milk.
bread.
She was probably. Yep, that's what happened. All right, that's all I got. Steve, thanks for joining me for today and helping me feel less crazy. I think we should end with something like from this thing.
When I call that person back, they tell me something that is even stranger. They say, look, I again am the messenger here. What I was told from somebody that's pretty high up at the White House is that Emmanuel Macron is holding up negotiations to end the Russian and Ukrainian war unless you stop speaking about his wife.
Makes perfect sense. Folks, if you liked the video, if you liked what you saw today, make sure you follow us over on Rumble. It's rumble.com/@KyleSeraphin. You can like the video there with a little thumbs up logo. You can do the same thing over on YouTube. It's youtube.com/@KyleSeraphin. There's going to be no Sunday sit down. We're going to take the entire weekend off, celebrate the freedom and independence in this country. So go back and review some of the old stuff. There's some really good ones. Locals, you can join our community over there, free or paid. Take your pick. KyleSeraphin.com will get you the shortcut there. You'll get all the links to every single article that we use every day. And that's free, by the way, of course, just so it's just fact checking us. And Spotify, if you want to share it. Some people said they had some problems with iHeartRadio and iTunes or the Apple podcast. If you're having that, go check us out on Spotify. We directly upload over there. They're the hosting company. KyleSeraphinShow.com is how you get there. Subscribe wherever you are. Give us a 5-star review if you can. I appreciate all those things. I do read most of your comments, even if I don't end up responding to all of them. I try to respond to a whole bunch of them. So thanks for being part of the audience. It makes it interactive. We really appreciate all of you guys. I hope you have a fantastic 4th of July. I hope you go see some things explode. That's good. I'm going to do that with my kiddos. And we'll catch you guys after a long weekend and a big break and hiatus. A fantastic couple days. And then we'll see you on the other side of the 4th. God bless you.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.